The Division 2 is one of those weird games where I've been mostly bored while playing it. My excitement levels neither dip nor raise when I'm playing The Division 2 for the most part. It's a fairly tedious, repetitive game. The combat is straightforward and relatively mundane mechanically, even though there is an interesting tactical bent to it. But for the most part, you're wandering from A to B across a big city, picking crap up, replacing the crap you have with more crap, and sitting behind cover, shooting enemies who are also hiding behind cover, and for the most part, I find it a little bit wearisome. That said, and this is the bit where it's weird, I do keep playing it, and I haven't really stopped playing it, and I'm thinking about playing it fairly often when I'm not. So it's one of those games that, despite not being all that exciting and enticing to me, nonetheless has sunk its little claws in, got its little hooks and it's under my skin. So it's doing something right. I felt this way about Mad Max, that game, the open world game that came out a few years ago, which I found mostly rather mundane, but I was playing it a lot. And that's where we're at with The Division 2. Now, at times, this game does click. There are moments during some of the more hectic firefights where it feels like the good kind of chaos. Enemies are flanking you. They're really quite intelligent at times. Not all the time. But every now and then, you're in a fight with allies. You've teamed up with some players, which is the way to play The Division 2. Playing it solo ain't fun. You're moving from cover to cover, trying to get strategic positions. It's been likened to a real-time strategy game, wearing the clothes of a shooter, and there is some truth to that. Enemies will always reposition themselves, and it behooves you to reposition yourself, know where your allies are, make use of your skills as well as your guns. And when it clicks, it really clicks. And I'm thinking, this is cleverly designed, interesting, tactical, engaging. And then, you'll be charged at by some walking tank bullet sponge bastard with a hammer that knocks you down in one bloody hit. Or, a more regular grievance, you're being ambushed from behind because some enemies have spawned and you had no idea where the spawn points were. I find a lot of the enemies not so much challenging to deal with as just annoying. Like the enemies that will duck behind cover and just stay there. Won't even pop up for a shot. They will just keep their head behind a wall and stay there. It's one of the reasons why I personally swear by the chem launcher skill, because you can equip different technological skills to your characters, and that'll shoot a poison gas cloud that covers distance and deals with enemies behind cover. If I didn't have access to that skill, I think I'd hate this game so much. Now, all of the enemies can be dealt with once you get used to them. I mean, the first time I encountered the hammer bastards, I was completely thrown for a loop because it came without warning.
Agent malfunction. Agent needs assistance. Fuck your eyes!
But once you can actually take some time to process what you're dealing with, if you can get through the sometimes visually chaotic gunfights where effects are going off everywhere and the screen's shaking and you're dealing with a particularly ugly UI, but once you can actually get a handle on what's going on, you can deal with all of these enemies in an individual way. The running tanks with the hammers, you can keep moving to avoid their melee swings. The enemies that are hiding behind cover, if you can reposition yourself and flank them, you can drive them out of it, or you can use grenades. But these often require the environment working in your favour. If you're already in an advantageous position, you're loath to move from it because the enemy has decided he wants to stay hidden behind that wall. You're loath to give up a very, a raised position looking down on the enemies if a hammer bastard is coming towards you. And this is amplified by the fact that some of these enemies will lay down a hailstorm of fire. capable of chewing through your health like that. None of it's impossible. There's no challenge in here where I thought, wow, this is really tough and brutal. It's more just a hassle. It's more, oh, well, I've just fought my way to this great position, and the environment doesn't have much else on my side of the fight. The enemies have all the cover, and now it's expecting me to move from the one good place I found. And it just, I said, most of the time it just gets on my nerves. But then at other times, it feels like there's a real good sense of pacing to the game, that the combat is more strategic than annoying, that you've got lots of options for cover and flanking positions, and that's when it really works. To be honest, The Division 2 works best in the cooperative, story-based missions. A lot of the free roaming stuff is just... it feels unnecessary. It feels like it's there just to create that live service product feel of the game. This is a game that would have benefited from being linear, if I'm honest. If this game had come out about 5 or 6 years ago, I could see it being more of a Gears of War style, corridor-focused, cover-based, linear shooter, and I think it would have been really good for that, because the environments designed specifically for story missions give good cover for the enemies, but also give good cover for you. There are lots of positions. They've clearly been thought about. These environments have been thought about in terms of how best to maximize the tactical feel of the combat, how best to clearly signpost where enemies are likely to come from, where the best places for your team are to be. That's when the game shines. When I'm wandering around Washington DC, going from A to B, just checking through the list of open world busy work that I gotta do, wandering around desolate streets looking for collectibles, rescuing hostages, taking over propaganda towers, taking over enemy territory, and doing those tasks over and over again in fairly exposed city streets that lack that detailed environmental design of the mission areas. That's when The Division 2's at its most tedious and least engaging, which is a shame because that is the majority of the experience. But if you are really bored and you've got a high tolerance for doing the same old shit over and over again, I do have to admit there is a fairly satisfying loop you can get yourself into, that Ubisoft loop. And while this isn't the core Ubisoft team, this is more of a massive entertainment game, it does subscribe to the Ubisoft gameplay loop philosophy of plonk a player in an open world, give them the same shit to do over and over again, and they can find themselves some sort of comfort in doing that. And there is a comfort in doing that. You can switch your brain off and just engage in a routine. For all my criticisms of Ubisoft, I cannot deny that their routine as gameplay philosophy has been very successful and can at times have its own weird sense of satisfaction. The Division 2 is yet another what we're calling looters shooters in the industry these days, a game intent more on being an ongoing live service than an immediately engaging game. But similarly to Anthem, the weaponry in the game is fairly grounded, realistic, and not all that inspired. Fairly regular firearms, assault rifles, shotguns, light machine guns, etc. So while you're constantly getting new loot and new weapons, none of it's really all that engaging or exciting. Same goes for all of the armor you can wear as well, just tactical vests and holsters and knee pads. The vast majority of the exciting loot, the cosmetic stuff, fun cowboy hats or t-shirts or whatever, are relegated to the game's loot box and microtransaction systems, so the fun of discovering a lot of that in-game is completely removed. This is compounded by the fact that this uninspired loot is thrown at you so regularly and in such vast quantities that I decided to coin a term while playing this called loot fatigue, where you're constantly getting rather drab, only incrementally upgraded loot all of the time, so you're spending half your time buried in a menu, comparing stats or junking items to turn them into crafting materials to get more crap, and eventually you get so sick of being buried in your inventory menu, and you feel so disinclined to pick up more trash off the floor that you start ignoring loot drops. Very quickly the concept of acquiring better gear stops being exciting and just feels like another job, another bit of busy work, another chore. I'm sorry, but spending a large portion of a game looking for better knee pads and comparing the knee pads you've picked up to other knee pads isn't grounds for an exciting, memorable thrill ride. But the term fatigue can be used to describe a lot of my time with The Division 2. I ended up finishing most sessions not feeling exhilarated or satisfied or so overburdened with adrenaline that I need to take a break like I do with a game like Devil May Cry 5. I stopped playing The Division 2 each time because I was just worn out on it. I keep going back to it, so yes, it is doing something to keep me tantalised in some weird way, but I nonetheless stop playing every time because I've got completely bored of it. I've been very harsh on The Division 2 here, I feel, but it's not because I hate the game. I don't dislike it, it's just very, very flawed. And it has the tools within itself to be a blast, and at times it really is a blast. But it suffers from the live service open world sprawl. There's so much quote-unquote content, so much nebulous stuff to do, so many menus to pick through, so many little features that the game barely actually describes to the player. Lots of guns to pick up and lots of mods to put in the guns, but so much of it feels meaningless. Like it just exists to exist, like it's there to waste your time. And I just wish The Division 2 had come out in an era where it was more acceptable to just have a straightforward game, where just making a game and selling a game was enough for the game industry. Because if this game had been better paced, more tightly pulled together, had a lot of the guff pulled out, I think this could have been an excellent title. But like with most games I've bought from Ubisoft in recent years, I'm going to keep playing it for a while more, and I will find things to enjoy in it. I'll get into that comfortable loop, and then I'll just stop. I'll just get too tired of playing it. I'll get bored of it before long. I probably won't ever see the end credits. I'll just stop and move on to the next thing and completely forget about this one. Which is how I engage in almost all of Ubisoft's games now, and how I engage with a lot of these games that want to be live services instead of fully realised engaging pieces of entertainment. And really, please, for a lot of these looter shooters going forward, get better loot. Have more exciting loot. Picking up incrementally better assault rifles every 5 minutes is just boring. All that said though, the chem launcher is excellent. Firing poison clouds is very fun. So 10 out of 10.